purchasing is almost always seen as like a cost center, not a profit center. And that's probably okay in terms of kind of finance thinking. It's definitely not okay in terms of what the power that procurement has to bring to your business.
Welcome to Uptech Report. This is our Applied Tech series. Uptech Report is sponsored by Terraleap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Conrad Smith, who's based in Utah. He's the founder and CEO at Graphite Systems. Welcome, Conrad. Good to have you on.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Now, Graphite or Graphite Systems is a B2B network where it provides supplier, procurement, and risk management solutions. That's from your website, but maybe you can help give an analogy of what's the problem that you're solving and what's your approach?
So Graphite is for businesses what LinkedIn is for people, right? In your LinkedIn profile, you describe your education, your experience, your skills, maybe some references, all those kind of things. That allows people to connect with you and understand who you are. There's a huge problem in business about making connections and doing that quickly and easily. Those connections are becoming more difficult because the world and the regulations and the risks are becoming more difficult every day as well. Just one more thing. When I started in the 90s, we would onboard and make connections with suppliers like in less than 24 hours. We'd fax them a little form. They would fax it back with their W-9, we'd put them in the system and we'd pay them. Sometimes the same day, often the next day we'd pay them. And that just doesn't work that way anymore. You can't engage with a company and assume that they're not going to bring some, horrible cyber breach into your environment, next week, right? So cybersecurity, data privacy with, GDPR and CCPA and all these other things that are going on around the world. Ethics and integrity is really important as you get, bigger. Lots of like almost every week or for sure every month, we hear about some new regulation that you have to comply with as you're engaging with suppliers. So what was a couple hours or a day is now often weeks or even months to engage with a supplier and do business with them. And that's just not acceptable. Business moves faster than that. So administrative process like procurement can't slow down business to that level.
Your history background, as you mentioned, being in procurement for a while, you actually at Intel for many years and then in Adobe. Help me understand the journey that you kind of started to see some of these challenges and problems that led you to starting Graphite.
Well, nowadays, I think some younger adults go to college and think, hey, I want to have a purchasing job or I want to be in supply chain. That didn't happen for me back in the 90s. I didn't even know what it was. So I had a biochemistry degree. I went through and got an MBA, and then Intel hired me to be a buyer. And full transparency, I thought only Nordstrom had buyers, and they were all about fashion and everything else. I didn't realize really every organization has a purchasing organization and buyers, and it's a big deal for them. So yeah, that first week I showed up at Intel all fired up because in the 90s, Intel was the tech company. I mean, if you think about it now, you've got all these other big tech companies, but Intel and Microsoft and IBM and Apple to a much lesser degree in those days were kind of the tech companies. I showed up for work and they were doing purchasing on paper, like, triplicate, like the white, pink, yellow paper. That's how purchasing was being done at Intel. And I'm whatever roles I've had, I'm an operational process improvement kind of person. And so that began my journey, which has been going for almost 30 years now to make purchasing work better. And in those days, it was about making work better for Intel and then eventually Adobe. In our business today, we're doing the same thing. And it's been such a fun journey because I can continue to focus on making it work better. But instead of bringing value to one organization, now we're bringing value to thousands of organizations. Very exciting.
The concept of innovation, I feel like some silos of maybe it's a particular industry, maybe it's a particular job role or department, seems to be a laggard in innovation. A consumer level, that always innovation happening. Maybe in the sales and marketing, innovation happens because money's there. But procurement, what do you think has stopped or prevented more innovation happening in procurement?
It's a good question. I told you about the fax machine in the 90s. The fax machine of the 2020s is called email. right? It's the same thing. And, most people that, people of my generation will remember junk mail coming into fax machines. Like you would get some ridiculous advertisement that just showed up on your fax machine. It's the same, it's the same, and business processes have shifted from there to here. Along the way, there's been a lot of solutions, software technology, the transformation to SaaS, lots of promises of automation and supply chain. And it's interesting because there's, like so many other parts of the world, there's the haves and the have-nots, right? If you're at Walmart, supply chain and purchasing automation is off the charts. It starts to snow in the Midwest and somebody in China is notified to start building snow shovels. And they just all this stuff automatically happens. And that's great, but that's super expensive for a large organization, for any organization to build out. But for an organization like Walmart at scale or Home Depot or these really big organizations, they can pull that off. I think about that like people talk about the haves and have-nots, the 2%ers. Like that's how it is in business. The 2%ers of the companies are automated because they have size and scope and scale. And Amazon, that automation allows them to dominate it in a huge way because of that scale and automation. But most organizations aren't that big and they don't have the money to do that. And the tools are complicated. And you talked about functions or industry. Purchasing is sort of like the bottom of the totem pole, because of course you're going to innovate and add, you're going to invest in the sales and revenue side of your business. Purchasing is almost always seen as a cost center, not a profit center. And that's probably okay in terms of kind of finance thinking. It's definitely not okay in terms of what the power that procurement has to bring to your business. It's pretty big, but it takes a shift from triplicate paperwork, pushing papers and checking boxes, to being strategic. And if you don't have at least some automation in the process, then all of your time is consumed really just with paperwork.
So you set out to help to solve this. Take me back to 2018, 2019, which is when you started Graphite in 2019. Did you just like one day say, all right, adios Adobe, I'm on my way out, I got something new?
No, it's more complicated than that, because when you sign an employment agreement with a big company, you agree that they own everything about you, like all of your ideas. Now, you can kind of get around that if your idea doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing for the company. Like you're in engineering and you have some great idea about, I don't know, facilities or something, or vice versa, right? But this idea was directly embedded in my job. And so it was quite a process to extract myself from the business and the idea from the business. And frankly, I'd spent 25 years working in the corporate space. I'd gotten to a pretty comfortable salary. I was happy. I loved my team. So comfort is, probably for those people that are thinking about this from a founder perspective, comfort is the enemy of progress. For a founder, for sure, or somebody with an idea like, oh, I want to do that, but I'm making a lot. How am I going to get healthcare? Or what am I going to do without a paycheck? Or like all of these things that are comfortable in our life, I think are the barriers to stop you from really pushing your innovation into reality. And in some cases, that's probably a reasonable barrier to entry. Like you need to be able to answer those questions about what are you doing and why are you doing it? And is it worth walking away from the comfort to go do those things? And for some people and some ideas, for sure, it's totally not worth it. Like stay where you're at, enjoy the comfortable place. But I would really encourage most people that just kind of you get this burning feeling inside you, like I got to go do this thing. Like this has to be fixed. It has to change. When it gets to that point, do it. Like get away from the comfort and make the transition. For me, that actually took several years because of this complication of extracting the IP out of Adobe. I mean, we didn't want to leave and then make a ton of money, which eventually is going to happen here, and have them come back and say, hey, wait a minute, you invented that while you were my employee. That belongs to us, and have some claim against it. And that probably wouldn't happen, but I spent a lot of my career reading contracts, and so I'm kind of sensitive to making sure we cover off all the bases.
I feel like I've heard many horror stories of, especially in the technology world, where people talk about, oh, that they were this particular code you developed over here, but then you used it in your next startup, and then there's ensues. So you actually decided to take a proactive measure and extract it. Is there any learnings from that that others who may be in similar corporate positions and have ideas that they could take away from that?
Well, I think the hard part, the first step that I had was, I'm in a comfortable place. I would love to actually build this idea inside of Adobe. Like, I mean, sure, being a founder and turning into some unicorn and having $1 zillion, it sounds exciting, but I was like, I'd rather just do this here. It will be easier to do inside the brand and the framework of where I'm at. And what I was most passionate about wasn't making $1 zillion. It was about changing the world and, bringing some real value. And so, yeah, I spent too much time convincing the company that they should trying to convince the company that they should try and do it before I finally got to the point where getting a no in a large company is really hard, which it took like 3 or 4 years for them to say, no, we're not going to do this. As soon as they said no, then my conversation shifted from telling them what a great idea it was to, okay, I want to go do it. I need some documentation that gives me permission to go do this thing and take it out and not have recourse. So it was absolutely proactive. I think that probably most people that you're going to talk to on a founder side, aside from software developers that are grabbing code and running with it, because maybe they and they're not even realizing the implications of that. But for sure, you don't want to take assets and intellectual property from a business and start building another business around it and assume that there's not going to be a problem. The early companies are super fragile, and all it takes is one lawsuit back from somebody like that will crush you when you don't have money. Like, the cost of legal resources is off the charts, and just one little mistake like that can crush you. But on the other side, I kind of wish I would have left earlier. I would be 5 years ahead of where I'm at right now, to get the business going. So you just got to balance that and with the right level of sort of risk taking and understanding of where it could come back and get you.
So first, you spend a couple of years trying to convince those internally, this is a great idea. They say, finally, you get a no. And then you were able to extract and say, all right, I want to run this. You decide to do that. You go. What's the funding round? Like, did you decide to bootstrap it? How did that progress?
Well, the other side of the cookie, as I'm going to stick around for a while, was a tremendous financial blessing for me, because Adobe stock has been going through the roof, and I was able to ride through those 3 or 4 years a lot of equity in terms of the shares that the company was and had granted to me. So I was able to begin kind of the bootstrapping process on my own. I went and started talking with a number of high net worth individuals in my network locally. I mean, individuals that were members, members of the company where I was, as well as just kind of people in the immediate area around me that I've been connected to. And I told them the idea, tried to get their support. They all liked the idea. One of the things that was I don't know, it should have been more obvious to me, but like almost every one of them, because they're high net worth individuals, already invest in other companies. And so they know, they're very connected to the local venture teams and everything else. And when they were like, oh, wait a sec, so you've actually lived this pain, you've run this process, you know everything about it, and now you want to go start a business to fix it, that's a perfect opportunity for me. And they knew me professionally and personally. And so, I was actually in an investor meeting yesterday listening to some VCs talk about funding ideas. And they said that, I can't remember what they put into like the other 20 or 30%, but they basically said 70% of the decision is the team. We want a great idea and a great timing and all those other things, but 70% of it's all about the team. So those individuals bought into the idea. One of them, I'm really excited because we just hired the son of one of our angel investors to help us from a sales perspective. This investor is Don Cash, and it's a really kind of a little bit of love to Don Cash. He was the first investor that put money in the account after I did. And so this week I've been thinking about my meeting Don and talking to him about the idea. I was telling his son about it earlier in the week. When I met Don, I had breakfast with him. I told him the idea. I met with him because he's on the sales side, and this two-sided network is purchasing related and supplier or sales related. And I wanted his take on the idea. That was my primary purpose for meeting with him, to see if he could poke any holes in the idea. And within 30 minutes, he said, "This is the best idea I've heard in a long, long, long time. I want to help you. I'll either give you money, or I will introduce you to people who can give you experience and money, or I will come and work on this project with you. You can have my time." And
Wow.
that he is a super high quality individual. He'd be working on the project right now, but he was on a quest to climb the 7 highest summits in the world. And
Wow.
between the time I talked to him and the time that he kind of signed the final paperwork, he climbed 2 of those 7 summits, and he signed the investor documents from base camp at Everest. And then unfortunately he actually had some problems on the top of the mountain and passed away on the top of Everest. So it's, so cool for us to have his son now involved in the project, because it, to us, one of my dreams is to turn this thing into something awesome. When he went to Everest, he told me, I've had a dream to go to Everest Base Camp. I don't think I'm strong enough to climb the mountain. I wouldn't even pretend. But I wanted to go to base camp, and I sat down with him the day before he left, and he said, "This business is your mountain. Like, I have my mountains. This business opportunity is your mountain. Go climb that." And so it's been a tremendous legacy to have him kind of involved. He has this phrase, if you will find him on social media, where he's like, "Do epic shit, like just do it." And so he did a lot of epic stuff in his life. I mean, he never said no to things, and he has a tremendous network of people around the state and around the country from a sales perspective. So many people that he's impacted and helped along the way. But we've taken that phrase epic because it's really cool. Employees, product, innovation, and customers, and that's sort of now the foundation for our business. So anyway, sorry for a little tangent there, but
No, it sounds like
Down Cash.
It sounds like individuals like John who helped inspire you to really pursue this and push this forward even further and harder. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and I think, interestingly, that discussion with Don happened before I resigned from my previous job, but it gave me the confidence to, it's like I said before, some ideas you shouldn't quit your job and go invest. This is it's an adventure. Like, it's a battle, it's a war, it's like all these analogies that you can think of. It's not easy. It's incredibly rewarding. And I'm not talking financial, I'm talking about intellectually, the learning and the growth and the stimulation from being that actively involved in something you're trying to create. Probably the only thing more creative than this is something like parenting, right? Like, where you're creating life and creating a family. But when you're creating a business, it's got a life of its own, and it's so exciting. But you're like, if you can't invest your own money, like you don't have the confidence to be throwing down your own money, don't do it. And I didn't really think about this back then, but I took money from friends and family, and you'll probably need to do that if you're starting a business. That is for me, and these are weird words to use, I'm sorry, but sacred responsibility. Someone's going to give me their money, and they want me to use it wisely and do good with it. That is a huge motivation for me. First off, to realize what I'm getting into and the commitments I'm making to these people. And secondly, to keep me going all the time. Like, I can't stop, I won't stop. Like, I can lose my own money. I'm not going to lose money for my family members and my, and my friends. I mean, eventually those things happen, right? And they forgive you and whatever. But that led to a funding round, a seed round with a venture capital team, where the angel money and the VC money came together into a price round with a VC. And I think that actually the VC round, the early seed round, was simplified because they saw the support from many of the people that invest or sit on boards with them, in the local business community. So,
one paved the way for the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is your first first venture that you've founded and started. Is that right?
Yeah, if you want to ignore paper routes and lawn mowing, then absolutely.
VC invested and seed funds coming in. Well, even paper routes maybe you get funding, but this kind of trajectory, it's a lot of learning, and you're kind of still in the learning stages. There's so much more to go. But help me understand. So you get the funding, and development is obviously the first piece. Were you able to find team members? Because are you on the technical side yourself, or did you go and find a good technical founding members?
Well, I'll tell you, my founding partner, his name's Aaron. This would not have happened without Aaron, because, back to the comfort conversation, Aaron was constantly nagging me like, this is an awesome idea. When are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? And we actually built solutions like software, business process, and workflow solutions in our comfortable purchasing jobs together for a number of years before we resigned from the company and did it together. So he had 10 years of software development experience. He was at Micron and doing a bunch of fab automation software for them. So, I have more of the business process and domain expertise in procurement. My time in procurement is a little longer than his. He has all of the software development experience. But I remember what I said in the beginning. This is like LinkedIn. This isn't like some little database that you can go scrap together a prototype and go live with a prototype and hope you make it, right? Because this thing opens up to millions and millions of companies connecting together, and it has to scale just like a social network has to scale. So that's a level of architecture and development that Aaron hadn't done. And after some sort of difficult false starts with some early technology, we had a really smart advisor. This is the other thing I'll say. I mean, I'm assuming founders are listening in here. The startup community is generally very amicable to each other. Unless you're in hardcore competition with each other, a founder, my experience is early stage founder type people will go to lunch with you and give you advice anytime you want, just about. And they're busy people, but this gentleman named Parr out of the Bay Area, he even flew out to Utah on his own dime, and that's probably not typical, to do a design and a code review and a business review with me and some of the early stage things that we were doing. And he walked out of that meeting and said, this is the skill and type of development, talent that you need to make this work. It took us 7 months to find that level of people and get them into the business. You need really talented technology people to help you solve a technology problem. And those best people, they call them kind of, 10Xers or top, the top talent. None of them are looking for work. None of them. You have to go find them, and you have to go. It's actually harder to convince those people to join the team than it is to convince a VC to give you money. I mean, that might sound crazy, but I think that's totally true, because they're all involved in really cool opportunities that have big upside for them. And, convincing them to walk away from that and do something totally new, it's not that easy. We hired 4 exceptional software developers and architect level people to be that founding team. So we got 4 software developers that were able to build a product and get it ready for production in this is proof of concept level, early, minimum viable product in 3 or 4 months. And interestingly, early people we talked to said, oh, we could build the whole thing in 6 months, 2 people, 6 months. It's just not true. And it might be for anyone's particular product. For ours, because of it's just highly complex to build a real-time architecture to do many-to-many two-sided network stuff. With workflow and a lot of sophistication, but that was critical. And if Aaron had the architecture and the experience with this, we probably would have bootstrapped it even further. But the opportunity for us was too big to try and drag it along, and so it really paid off. And we had a lot of, like I said, we had commitments on $2 to $3 million from angels before we really started the business. And when you have resources, you need to use them wisely, but you need to use them, and you're in it to win it, so you need to go for it.
Taking that action with the resources you have on the right people. It sounds like the first thing was knowing who you needed, which that advisor was able to give, who flew out. And the next hard part is actually finding said talent. What did you do to find them? If you just take a second to ask about that.
It's networking, like cold LinkedIn, like, hey, it looks like you have this experience. LinkedIn is awesome to help you find people. But like I said, most of these people, they don't just take we bought a lot of lunches. I'll say that, hey, can we meet up for lunch? And you meet and you talk, and a lot of times that leads.
Do you remember how you talked to versus like that took you to get to the four?
I don't. My guess is it was probably 20 lunches and other meetings along the way before we tapped into, one of the four founders. We actually had lunch with him, and he's like, yeah, this is really interesting. It's kind of a cool idea, but I can't leave my current company. It'd be the end of them. I mean, they really need me. And we were like, well, we really need you too. We'd love to work with you. He went home and talked to his wife, and his wife was like, what's the risk in talking to them again? Like, what's the harm? So he calls back and said, let's have lunch again. And we had lunch again, and we kept the conversation going. And then he introduced us, like his circle of network of people that he could introduce us with was probably 8 or 10 really interesting software developers, and four of they were all really good, but 4 of them were really good and wanted to join. And interestingly, they just coincidentally, they kind of brought a lot of complementary skills to the mix. I mean, one of them wanted to sort of be a lead and manage the sprints, and one of them is just like insanely intelligent, like just beyond genius level kind of person from a technology, everything. Like, hats off to this guy. If I had a tough decision to make, I'd probably ask him, if he'd give me some direction, I'd take it in almost anything. But it's like complementary skills coming together, and that was really nice how that happened. So,
and you're saying all these 4 actually came off of that one individual who didn't actually end up working for you, but had conversation.
It's funny. His wife said, go talk to them. And yeah, that's Dan, and he's one of our founding 4 developers. So yeah, wow. He joined in, and he introduced us to a lot of other people, and that's networking, right? That's how it works. Yeah,
that you can find eventually the good talent actually through the others that you first meet. So being able to grow from there. Now for the technical challenges, as you've already stated, it wasn't a simple feat. So what can you share other than this past 1-2 years that you guys have been building this, coming up on 3 years? What's some of the hurdles you've overcome or still working on?
Wow. Well, you make decisions early on that you kind of live with over time. And that's just life. I mean, I look back now and think, dang, if we could have done that differently, then we would have saved ourselves this extra time or effort or hassle now. And that's technology wise and lots of other stuff. But you have to make decisions the very best you can that balance your priorities. And speed is a very important one. And as your business grows, it's always going to be really easy to look back and sort of pretend or wish that you had made different decisions. But that's just not possible, right? You're doing the best you can. You're prioritizing the best you can. We actually made great decisions. There's very few things that we've had to kind of go back and re-architect and rebuild. There's been a couple of things, but we founded in December of 18, and we had our first product in March of 19, and we had our first revenue in April of 19. And a lot of organizations don't have the benefit and the blessing to do that, right? To get there that quickly. So we moved fast, and we knew where we were going longer term. I mean, we have the benefit of knowing this is a 2-sided network, and there's Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so I imagine those companies, and you can listen to their story, like how they were built, and listen to their stories about how quickly things broke and had to be rebuilt. Because they didn't understand this concept of 2-sided. None of us did. 2-sided networks in the early 2000s. No, this wasn't a thing. but so we've been able to benefit from a lot of other projects and technologies and businesses in terms of how we think about this, and we have been able to think about it with the end in mind. Now, I often think back whether Zuckerberg, when he sat down and started building out this Harvard, directory of good-looking people, whether he even had the foggiest idea of all of how this would follow on in the end. Because we've spent so much time conceptualizing where this goes as a business, it makes me wonder how much time they conceptualized this early in their business. But that big vision and the past learnings really helped us a lot in making those decisions. But I guess I would say too that a lot of this makes it sound really hard and really complicated and scary, and don't do it unless you've got all this stuff figured out. If you have that bug and you just can't stop thinking about it, just freaking do it. Like, start it, do something. And because I run marathons, and what I've learned about running marathons and building businesses is most, like 99% of failure happens before you even get to the starting line. And it comes with you basically just saying, I don't know if I can do that. That seems hard. Like, it might kill me. Like, there might be problems. And so you don't show up at the starting line. And if you don't show up at the starting line, you're sure as heck never going to make it to the finish line, right? So if you've got the bug and you've got the attitude and don't be afraid. Go put your toes on the line and start taking those first few steps. There's tons of people that will help you along the way, just like in a marathon. Tons of encouragement from the side of the road, from other runners. I guarantee if you fall down and if people are around that can help pick you up and put you back together, there will be people that there to help you as well. I'm not very far down this journey, and I've already I have lots of conversations with people that are, a year or two behind me now that want some like this feedback and advice on how to move forward. I'm always happy to meet up with people and do what I can to help them, because dozens of people did that for me just to get me to the starting line and to get through that first few miles.
Well, we're excited to see what happens next, because obviously one piece is deciding to make the leap, take the plunge. The next is getting it off the ground and get some traction going, which you say being able to go from idea to concept to then the product, all under 2 years, getting some revenue in. That's very very good, very impressive. But then beyond for scaling and growth. So we might have to check it out in a year from now, as well as you continue to scale up. And obviously it's a network. So the idea is that more and more people will join the network. The power of it only increases. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And that's what we're seeing right now. I mean, when we started, our first customer was like, there was no network benefit from peer companies. We just signed a awesome tech company in July that everybody would recognize. Everybody uses them. And when we analyze their supply base, there's already like a 40% overlap between their suppliers and the suppliers that are already in the network. So we're building these little micro networks, and that network value is coming quickly. But yeah, making good progress. It's just like our eyes are always bigger than our stomachs. The old mantra that you can what do they say? You can always do less in the first year or two than you think you can, or that's probably not exactly how you say it, but the first little bit always goes slower than you think. You're always overestimating what you can do in the beginning. But over 5 or 10 years, what everyone tells me, I'm not there yet. You'll go a lot further than you even thought you would. So you gotta be patient in the beginning, and you just got to go for it, and have the trust and confidence in yourself and people around you. And yeah.
Your business model is based off of the individual suppliers joining. They don't pay anything. So the idea is that network growth should continue to grow, but it's just then finding those that are the vendors that want to get it. They're the ones that would be the ones paying for the platform. Is that right how it works?
Well, sort of. I mean, we don't think about, if you just think about LinkedIn, it's a perfect analogy here, because anyone can use LinkedIn for free. Anyone can use Graphite for free. Those people that need to use advanced features and workflow and enterprise capabilities that aren't kind of typical across most businesses, those organizations pay us, to build out that workflow and those capabilities, those advanced features for them. But everybody, anyone and everyone can use it for free, and it should be that way, because we need and want everybody in the network.
Got it. And so the business model is based off of those larger companies wanting to be able to then build great workflows off of it, but anyone can benefit from it already. What would you say, this is a question I'm always curious, I'm starting to ask more often, is the difficulty of adoption, of getting people to say, I'll try something new, the fear of the unknown, especially in maybe areas people aren't usually innovating as often or as frequently. How are you addressing that fear of adoption and being able to overcome and say, yes, try this new technology?
That's a great question. I would say that, go read the book Crossing the Chasm or something, I think is the name of the book. It kind of talks about the mindset of people that you're going to be talking to. There's some people that you'll talk to that there is no way they're going to, take new technology. And there's other people that wake up every day and just feverishly anticipate the release of the next new anything, because they want to be the first and have the best, and like they're on that bleeding edge of new stuff. And there are people like that, and you need to be thoughtful about who are you talking to, because they all kind of wear the same shirts to work, kind of, right? I mean, it's hard to figure out who those people are that are going to help you in those early stages of the process, the ones that will be more open and receptive. But you just have to find them, and those people will be like, yeah, this is cool. And that doesn't mean they're going to write you a check for $100,000, but most of them will be like, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's do a proof of concept. Let's do a pilot. Let's do something. So, and a lot of this depends on the complexity of what you're trying to do, and the integration and the price points, and there's all the risk and all sorts of factors in terms of how you go about it. But yeah, I think you're probably going to have to do free stuff for people, or really low cost stuff for people to get the ball rolling and work out. I mean, in the beginning, it's a beta of sorts, and you need somebody that really wants to work with you in that environment. And yeah, the wrong person there is going to sink you, because they're going to be like, you're going to get a bad review right from the beginning. Like, they sold me on this thing and, only 20% of it's working. Well, that's kind of typical, that minimum viable product is 20% of what the vision is, right? Or less. So you want to be in that environment with those kind of people, and they will help you. We had some amazing early customers that were just like that for us, and kind of helped us through that process. And then it grows, like I said, read the book, and it kind of talks about how you think about, and we're not past the chasm. So, I can tell you more about that later, but right now it's all about finding companies that really want to transform and, make a difference, and approaching them in a way that highlights the value and, helps them along, helps them kind of try before you buy, I think is a really important way to think about it.
Crossing the Chasm is definitely a good book, but it's helpful to hear just those initial steps that you need to take, and then be able to go from there. We'll have to, again, circle back as you approach that chasm and continue to make the leap across. Thank you so much, Conrad, for sharing us a taste of the journey that you've been on, and suggesting and encouraging others to take the leap, that it is worth it already. From just being in there.
Hey, you only live once, and we're creative creatures. Like, get in the business of creating. Don't just be a consumer, be a builder and a creator. And I don't know how to describe it, but I'm in my mid 50s now, and I feel like, my body doesn't feel like I'm 20, but like my energy and my enthusiasm is like, I feel like a new person in terms of the challenge, the learning and the growth and the engagement that comes from, passionately trying to, being back in that creative mode.
It's exciting. For those that want to learn more, you can go over to graphiteconnect.com. Graphite, GRAPHITE, connect.com. Thanks again, Conrad, for joining us, and we'll see you all on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.